And you realize that the world has only got a couple of three great guys every once in a while. But the other thing was, I was raised at the beach. I was always looking at that big blue thing called the Pacific Ocean alongside of me. And I grew up as a surfer, the beach boy. I was one of the early pier punks. And I love the ocean. Probably a romantic notion in me that I had to see over that big thing, that big blue thing. I was a sailor for the first half of my life. I spent a lot of time in love with boats and the sea, sailing, the beach. I think in World War II, I was afraid of being drafted into the Army, and I didn't want to walk through the mud, because that's what we know soldiers do. So I avoided that by joining the Merchant Marine. The Merchant Marine kept you from being drafted, except that you were now in the worst possible place to keep your life going. The Merchant Marine lost 37% of all the people in it ever. The Marines came along at 21%. The Army was lower than that. The Navy was the bottom of it. The Coast Guard was hardly anybody. But so to get away from danger, I joined the biggest piece of danger you could join. Because most ships were sunk at sea with everybody on board. But I didn't care about that. I was 17 and I had to see the world. This romantic notion seemed to pervade with me. I got drafted anyway. I came home and I goofed off too long on the beach, playing volleyball, looking at pretty girls, and got drafted and went in the Navy. I was on the flagship of the largest collection of ships, men, guns, airplanes that history had ever seen, Task Force 38. I was on the ship that was the head of that whole thing, the ship that led the whole thing. And we were kamikaze. I was a gunner, shot down kamikazes for 6 months almost daily. I slept in my shoes, I never got out of my clothes, slept in gun tubs. The gunners were the tiredest guys of all because they were always on duty. But the kamikazes got through and nailed us, a couple of them. I wound up going swimming. I swam around and saved the pilot, dragged him to the on. Was picked up by a destroyer and back on board the ship a day or two later to scrape up my burned buddies, my shipmates, 400 of them. And I spent several weeks coming home with this experience. I don't know if I ever grew up. I think that should have made me into a man, but I was still wanting to be a kid. And so the sense of humor, it didn't seem to erase it with me. I was not as taken by the death of my friends as much as most people seem to be, but I went back to the beach and art schools. I was in and out of big city art schools for a while. Met with beautiful women, always beautiful women. And, I traveled on ships. I sailed to the Orient and to Europe. And I remember sailing across the Atlantic in 100-foot seas, coming into Bremerhaven, Germany, and the pretty girl picked me up in the bar. I was pretty cute. And she took me home.
You're getting on the subject.
I know.
That's really
I don't know, my life is so full of interest that I can't stop. Her father wanted me to drink schnapps, and I'm a cheap drunk. And I drank schnapps until I barfed out the window, all the bicycles, 3 stories big. And then they put me to bed, and the girl climbed in with me. And Mom and Dad went to the door and went, I don't know how you write those in words, but I was a cheap drunk. I wasn't any kind of a lover. But those things happened to me a lot. I loved up crossing the ocean many times, going to the South Seas, lived in Tahiti. I was on I built a trading post on a coral atoll for several months, 6 months. I've had a lot of adventures in my life. But when I came home from that, I wound up with a dune buggy. I don't know where. I'm a guy that that likes cars, of course. And I think those cartoon figures in my mind seem to propel me toward making something that looked like fun. The message of the dune buggy is fun. And fun is what we have in our youth. And if we lose our youth, we still want to cling on to fun. Clinging to your youth is something that we can't help doing. And the dune buggy seemed to express that simple thing. I don't know why I was able to do what I did, because I guess I have a sense, I've been told by great designers that have a sense of proportion and sculptural quality, third-dimensional design. And the business of creating the dune buggy came not, I didn't invent the dune buggy, the fiberglass dune buggy. Of course, the fiberglass dune buggy took over the world. I touched the chord. I have no idea. I mean, I wasn't trying. It was just something that came out of the whole business. But a sense of humor is something you never want to lose, because if you do, you might as well just dig a hole and pull the dirt in behind it. And I think that part of me was demonstrated in that shape. The little car was sent a message to people, and they love it. It seems to be timeless. Little kids, 6 years old today, see it for the first time and say it's really cool. Well, they did that 50 years ago too. Isn't that interesting?
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I was being told that Anel's meant to be here talking to Bruce. Bruce is more than capable of obviously handling this himself. So I'm just going to keep to one side. Bruce, I mean, there is some things we can prompt you with, but I think we'll also have a question and answer session at the end. But Bruce, feel free to crack on. We were obviously interested in the whole inspiration behind the VW, but why specifically VW platform? Was that something that you experienced and thought this would make a perfect base for the beach buggy, or did you look at other alternatives?
I think Hitler said a memo to Porsche. He said, how much would car for the people's car? Well, Hitler was stingy. But
he's been accused of a lot of things.
And Porsche wasn't a stingy man. He didn't know that Hitler was only talking about the German people, because Ferdinand gave it to the whole world. And the little Volkswagen is so unique in that you can remove the body and still have something you can drive. That's the beginning of the kit car mind. Anybody can think of Volkswagen and turn it into a Ferrari, at least on the outside. And that's been done over and over. But I think the Volkswagen offered this opportunity, as well as the fact that it had the layout that was so useful off-road. Because of its engine in the rear, transmission in the rear, if you shorten it up a little bit, you can get the live ballast, that's the driver and his passenger, towards the rear end. Then you really get some weight over the rear wheels. When you widen the tires, you gain rotation, traction. And so it became something that was far better than the old-fashioned dune buggies. There had been dune buggies that were called water pumpers. They're always made out of old Fords and Chevys and Dodges and so forth. Made by some farmer that didn't know how to weld, but they were fun. And the dune buggy was made from a Volkswagen, just ran circles around. In fact, I remember seeing a Volkswagen floor pad that hadn't been shortened at all. It didn't even have fat tires, it had 3.5-inch tires. And a guy sitting behind the seat, he had a piece of pipe over his steering column, and he's just flitting around like a mosquito on water, because the car was so exceptionally laid out well for the sand. And driving around up in the sand dunes was no problem. Well, of course, I saw that. I was in Cuba Beach with some friends, playing with a sand sail. And I saw this little Volkswagen, and I went home, and of course, I like to draw. I'm drawing on everything. Letterheads and matchbooks, and sticking out of all my pockets. My wife said, oh my God, what next? You know? It came out that it was a little Volkswagen-based dune buggy. But the other thing about me and my world is the sea and the boats and the ships. I'm very good at these things. And you can have a lot of talent and you're not really smart. But I think I was heavy on the talent side. But I worked at a boat company, building all the tooling, that is the plugs, from which they're made from the naval architect's drawings off of a plugs, a bunch of numbers called table wall sets. And I built plugs from both 20, 22, 25, 30, 40, 50, 50, 60 feet. And I built molds, and molds had to roll over, and then molds had to split open, and the pieces had to roll over. It was a lot of fun engineering all this structural stuff. Those things weighed 40, 50,000 pounds. I didn't know what I was doing, but I always made sure that it was strong enough. Probably overkill it a lot. But I made all that stuff for a period of years. Now, you get to thinking so much about fiberglass, its production, the things you don't want to do again because you learn that's not the right thing to do. And I came out of a period of 3 or 4 years of building plugs and molds for the world's biggest sailboat company. And there were some dune buggies happening, but they're always handmade and very ugly. Made out of tubing welded together, operated aluminum to cover things up. And I couldn't think that way. That seems to hold you into a box of straight lines and square corners and things that you can't have any fun with, the sculpture. But I'm the kid out of art schools and a lot of art training, and I used to teach life drawing, figure drawing, all of that. There's a sense of movement, gesture. And when I started making a dune buggy plug from which a mold would be made, it just sort of looked like a woman's butt here and there, and I couldn't help it. It's just natural to sculpt and to not be ugly. And I've been told I have a great sense of proportions and a sense of style, and so all of that comes together in something that is amazing that it's so important today. It's touched the core of people that I'll never understand. I just have to come along at the right time with the right stuff to make it happen. So it's a big accident. People ask me today, why and how? I'm still scratching my head.
I think, I don't know about everyone here, but certainly for me, you did something that had integrity. So, like you say, you're an artist, you're kind of into dune buggies, you brought everything together, and you do something with integrity for no other reason than the fact you really had this passion for it. Other people relate to that, pick up on it, become a fan of it, and then it snowballs. So you didn't do it, I mean, tell me, did you do it as a business to start with, or did you just want to build this beach buggy?
See, the best way to be free is to not worry about profit.
Yeah.
And to think in terms of tomorrow's profit is to stop you right now. If you try to go to the bank and say, look what I'm going to do, I need $50 grand. Get out of here, kid. So you have to have that craziness of being free. Being free with some talent and experience in fiberglass, and being a beach boy and an ex-art student, and all that combination of all those parts, it broke into this crazy thing.
At any point when you first, so you created this, and was this at home you did this first body, this first buck, or was it in the corner of a boneyard, or did anyone ever look at it and go, what the hell are you doing? That's never going to go anywhere.
You know, there's an ad going on right now. Great things start in the garage. I did. I had a little dinky shop. You could hardly move around in it. And I got to certain decisions that I wasn't sure about, like the height of the side. So my friends were always in my shop, bothering me. So I said, well, I'll put them to work. And I made a couple of looks. You see, you take all the gnomes, that's the engine tray, the floor, the Volkswagen seat, the steering column, place them where you know that they should be. Now you got to fill in the rest, the unknowns. It's mocking up before you get your answers. Well, I got something called the front end and the hood and the back end, but I didn't have the sides yet. I didn't know the side exactly where they ought to be. So my friends were in and out, in and out. I said, give a couple of clamps, a little 2x2. You can just put that wherever you think that it ought to be. Now, today's dune buggies are exactly from that day 50 years ago. Because my friends moved it up and down. Whenever it was up high, you felt very good inside the car, but it was hard to climb in and out. When you got it way down low, it got easy to get in and out, but you didn't feel protected, comfortable. So there was a place in there that was somewhere in between all these things. And I said, initial, where you put it. Well, after about 2 weeks, 20 or 30 people initially just went up and down, and I finally found the place for everybody. That was my decision made by my committee. Otherwise, I'd all by myself mumbling, you know.
then took this kind of set of molds and ideas and things that you started creating. Maybe, what was the process then? Did you have a stripped down VW chassis yourself that you throw around the dunes, you sort of offered it up? Because I want to know, when did you start shortening chassis and that sort of thing?
When I saw these other little Volkswagen, there was 3 or 4 of them maybe, little buggies made out of steel tubing and welded together and stuff. But I saw their wonderful potential because of the way they were laid out, all this weight on the rear end. You know, you can take a Volkswagen right out on the beach, just a stock Volkswagen, but you can't do it with Ford or Chevrolet. You know, it's stuck. Because the engine's up here, the back wheels are back there, and everybody's going the wrong way. But when you lay all that weight over the driving wheels, you're going to have a lot of traction. Well, if you increase the size of the tires, you're going to have flotation as well. So all that was fairly simple, you know. And I saw my friends doing it, and I found that 75 or 80 inches in wheelbase, this one works a little better than that. There wasn't many, 4 or 5, a handful of buggies. And so from that basics that I saw in my friends, I didn't invent the dune buggy. I invented the fiberglass dune buggy. I came back to what I was comfortable with, making plugs and molds. And you see, in the parlance of fiberglass, you always say a plug creates the mold from which the parts are produced. Once you make the mold, you can throw the plug away. You don't really, but you can. So the plug is so important to making everything function correctly, and everything always had to function. Looks had to attend to everything, but first it had to function. Form follows function, and simplicity is the best design. That's all art is. It's true.
So many people still now refer, when you look at, say, the modern VWC, the stance and camber, and all these things that people look at and go, it serves that practical function. And people say it always form as function. It's interesting, 50 years ago, you're there saying things, and probably 50 years before that, someone was saying as well.
It'll never change.
Well, no, it won't, because that's kind of how things work.
This happens to be the truth. And you know, art, you can't fake art. You can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake that.
So tell me, when you've got this, because it became an item, it became a product, tell us about those early days when suddenly you drive around this beach buggy and people are going, I like that, because obviously, you know, we're here 50 years later, there's, you know, all these people here because of what you did all those years ago. So tell us about that early evolution of suddenly popularity as Campbell, you know, maybe you get a letter from Japan or something, or whatever.
The first buggies were what we call monocoques. They were just a simple tub of fiberglass. And the thing around the edges of the feathers, well, if you have a sheet coming up without any stiffness, wobble. So you put feathers on it, and it stops the wobbles, and also keeps the mud out of your face. So everything had to work at least once, if not twice or 3 times, in some functional way. And you try to make it function and do something with some sense of taste and simplicity. And it's a real hard balance to make something simple. It's very easy to make it complicated. The complexity always got in the way, and you said, no. And you backed off and took a better look at it. See, so you have to have a mind to look in a kind of a conceptual way. Before it's there, I'm very good at seeing it before it's there. When you draw it, you are that kind of a guy. So I can draw very well. I used to teach drawing, but all of this comes down to the reason for the Meyers Max dune buggy. Now, what happened is that there became a tradition of copying it. And the world copied the damn thing. And I had a patent. I paid a lot of money for it. And when you lose in the courtroom, I was trying to protect it. You don't get the money back. You don't slap your wrist and say, go home. You're dead. And the world came rolling in, you know, and they were all over. They crossed the oceans in both directions. They were in Australia, they were in Africa, they were all over this place, and all over Europe. And it was pretty soon, I was so overwhelmed that I got very unhappy, and I was trying to keep my little company alive. I had 50 or 60, 70 people sometimes. So I invented the fiberglass hot tub, a spa. They were always made out of wood. They always came from Sweden or someplace. And I thought that was a nice thing. It's about the same size as a dune buggy.
I think I'm a fan of Volksworld.
Well, and then I came along with another thing called a night racer. It's a little bed that looked like a McLaren race car. It's little boys sleep in it. And then I did another thing called a bedliner for pickup trucks because I had a vacuum machine. And all that stuff was taken up by other people, and they went off and made more money than I did. Because I was never thinking about tomorrow's profit. I was always creating something that could be a useful item to the people. And so that doesn't cut it. It's great for somebody's company, but now get out of the way, let's make money with it. Well, I didn't know how to do that.
But it has very useful integrity though. I'm sure people listening will agree with the fact that there's people out there who have set out to intentionally, especially now in the internet world, people will sit down and go, right, how are we going to make lots of money? They don't actually think that with a good product and a good soul and a good heart and a good way of doing things, that's going to happen anyway. So you have given the world this 50 years of legacy of happy memories, albeit some people have been copied products or whatever. It's this wonderful kind of crest of a wave that you've been riding